Okay, here we go. We're getting close to the end, right? Only a few more chapters. Chapter 30 is where we'll pick up today. A silence broken. With Nari close behind him, Sita threw his arms around Jomar and hugged him close. "Your innocence saved you. I told you the river is wise." Then he spoke in a whispery voice full of tears. "I never would have recovered if the waters had taken both you and Aban." Jomar returned the embrace. "Thank you for letting me take the test in Zepha's place." He turned to Gamil. "I'm standing here because of you. When I was tiring, your ball kept me afloat. When I slipped on the bank, you pulled me up." Gamil smiled. "We saved each other." "We did, but why risk your life to save mine?" "I saw you all leave the house early," Gamil said in a guarded voice. "I heard people on the street talking about an ordeal to be held on the bridge." He faltered. "An ordeal that had to do with the theft of a bead." Sita's eyes were hard with suspicion. "What do you know about this?" Gamil looked at the ground instead of answering. "You must tell us," Jomar said. "I've tried to tell you over and over again," Gamil said, "but you were always in a hurry, too busy to listen to me." "I'll listen to you now," Jomar said with a clutch of guilt. "Before you do, I want to stop at my house," Gamil said, his face tense. They walked to Gamil's home in an uneasy silence, then waited for him to come out. When he did, he came up to Sita and slowly opened his clenched fist. "I'm the one who should have taken the river test." On his open palm lay the missing lapis bead. Nari gasped. "How did you get that bead?" "You stole it," Sita thundered. With a swipe of his hand he took the bead from Gamil's palm. Gamil locked his eyes on Sita. "No, that day, the day of Aban's death, he stopped to show me this bead on his way to the harbor. He was so proud of his work on Bitati's necklace, especially the holes he drilled in the lapis beads. He was in a hurry to go to the harbor to inspect some gems. He told me I should keep the bead until he returned, thinking it would be safer at my house than on the waterfront. Aban rushed off." Gamil blinked back tears. "He never came back." "But you kept it," Sita said. "Why didn't you return it long ago?" Now tears fell down Gamil's cheeks. "I didn't want you to know that Aban disobeyed you by taking the bead out of the workshop." He struggled to continue. "I wanted you to have only good memories of your son." Gamil's words rang true to Jomar, and he could sense Sita's anger evaporating like morning mist on the marsh lake. Sita looked hard at Gamil, then sighed. "You've been a good friend to my son even after his death. Come to the house this afternoon for Aban's funeral ceremony. We must hold it today, because soon they'll come to take away the temple lyre we've been working on." Nari put a hand on Gamil's arm. "Jomar's sister will play on the lyre and sing a praise song for our son, for your friend." Gamil nodded his acceptance to the invitation and returned to his house. Nari hurried ahead to prepare for the ceremony. Sita spoke in a somber tone when he and Jomar were alone. "How could I have been so sure that Zepha took the bead? I had no evidence, no proof." Jomar spoke with effort. "You'd known her for only a day when the bead was found missing. I've known her all her life, and I believed her guilty." His voice broke. "And she's my sister." Sita patted Jomar's shoulder. "Go to the bazaar and bring back Zepha." Chapter 31. Jomar hurried through the winding streets to the bazaar. This time the music of the little band drew him like a lodestone. When he joined the people listening to the music, Zepha nodded to him as they played. She was singing her song to the sun god, repeating the last line before the song came to an end. "Bold Utu battles darkness to defeat the night." Jomar went up to her. "Your song is fine, Zepha. The group is stronger because of you." Zepha was as thin and dirty as before, but her smile lit up her face. "This is the first time you've had anything good to say about my music." Jomar was stung by the truth of what she said, but her smile helped him continue. "The lyre is finished, so Aban's funeral must be held today before it's taken to the temple. Let's start off. I have important things to tell you on the way." But Zepha didn't move. "I've composed a song for Aban, but I'm frightened that Malik will see me." "You need to cover your hair so you'll look like a boy," Jomar said. A member of the band stepped forward holding out her scarf. Zepha wrapped it carefully around her head so that her long hair was tucked inside. Jomar watched with envy at the affection shown as she said goodbye to her friend. As soon as they started the walk to Sita's house, Jomar exploded with his news. "The bead's been found! You're innocent, just as you've said you were." My own words didn't convince you, Zephyr said coolly, so now there's proof that I'm not a thief. Jomar put his arm around her. I've wronged you, Zephyr. Your denial should have been more than enough. Her face softened as she stared at him. Tell me how the bead was discovered. While Jomar told her the linked stories of the missing lapis bead and the river ordeal, Zephyr's eyes grew large with wonder. When he stopped speaking, she spoke in a voice full of emotion. I know you don't believe in the wisdom of the river, so taking the test in my place took courage. Zephyr, don't go back to the bazaar, Jomar pleaded. I'll find a way to keep you safe at Sida's house. You heard Nari tell me that I'd have to leave on the day the lyre was finished, Zephyr said. Then she looked thoughtful instead of angry. Living with Nari was hard, but I think I know why she's been so mean to us. How can you know this? Jomar asked. I know because I know, Zephyr said, glancing at him with irritation. Do you remember my favorite pig, the one I'd taken care of since the moment he was born? He disappeared one day, and I found him dead in a deep irrigation ditch. She looked up at Jomar. I didn't want to be around pigs for a long, long time, because I'd lost the one I loved the most. I remember, Jomar said. You made up a praise song for him. And you made fun of me. Jomar could feel his cheeks redden. He hadn't realized how deeply felt his sister's song had been. I think you're right, Zephyr. When Nari looks at us, living in her house, she can only think of Aban, who should be there instead of us. They walked on together in silence. When they entered Sida's house, Nari went up to Zephyr as if to envelop her in her arms, then stopped. I know now that you didn't take the bead. Even when I thought you did, I never should have told Malik. You lived under my roof and needed my sheltering, and I failed to protect you. Nari now spoke in a voice filled with tears. You've answered my cruelty with kindness, Zephyr, and I plead for your forgiveness. Zephyr gazed at Nari, hesitated, then embraced her. As Sida and Jomar watched, Nari slowly put her arms around Zephyr. Zephyr pointed to her worn tunic. I must wash myself before the ceremony. Wait, I've something to give you. Nari slid out a flat reed basket from underneath her cot. Opening it, she held up a long ivory-colored tunic of finely woven linen. I wore this at my wedding, and was saving it for Aban's wife. I give it to you, Zephyr, and I'd be pleased if you wore it for the ceremony. Zephyr smiled and cradled Nari's gift in her arms as she walked to the washroom. When she returned, she was transformed. She had circled her braided hair twice around her head, and Nari's close-fitting gown, which left one shoulder bare, fit perfectly. A soft knock. Sida greeted Gamil at the door. After Jomar introduced him to Zephyr, he gazed at her with admiration, but seemed too shy to speak. They sat at the table for the little feast of wheat porridge, covered with sweet date syrup, that Nari had prepared to mark the ceremony. We've had a frightening morning that ended well, Sida said. He opened his hand to reveal the lapis bead on his outstretched palm. Zephyr, I wish I could give you this bead that has brought you only grief, but it belongs to the temple. Zephyr took up the small blue gem, flecked with yellow, and studied it closely. It still looks like it fell from the starry night sky. She returned it to Sida. You're kind to wish it were mine. Aban made this bead out of a bit of lapis, Jomar said. Could it be part of the ceremony in some way? Sida looked surprised, then pleased. A good thought, Jomar. The bead will represent Aban today. Holding it in one fisted hand, Sida beckoned the others to follow him into the workshop. Nari had already pushed the tables and equipment against the walls, and now the lyre stood alone in the center of the room. Jomar heard Zephyr gasp when she saw the bull's head, and he saw for the first time that the lyre resembled the body of a bull, and the size and position of the head were exactly right. The long soaring horns, vivid eyes, and beard of dark blue lapis were in perfect harmony with each other. Like a deity, the bull seemed to stand apart from them, and from all the difficulties that had accompanied its creation. Zephyr walked to the lyre and stood there quietly, one hand resting against the silent strings. Moments passed. Jomar grew uneasy until he realized what Zephyr was doing. The substitution of the bead for Aban's body had changed the meaning of the ceremony, so his sister was changing the words to the song as she stood there. Finally Zephyr raised her hands to the strings, but then footsteps were heard instead of music. Kurgal, the music director, entered the workshop, trailed by two husky guards. The three men stopped short when they saw the lyre. Sida! "This is superb work, more glorious than anything I'd even hoped for," Kurgal said. "Your words are welcome," Sita said. "Before you remove the lyre, will you allow this young girl to sing a praise song in honor of my son?" Kurgal's eyebrows shot up. "This child is to play on the temple lyre?" Zephyr looked to Sita for guidance. Sita silently mouthed one word: "Begin."